What do you really know about early humans? When you imagine our ancient ancestors, do you picture um, grunting, club-wielding figures?
Yeah, sort of driven purely by instinct,
Yes,
scraping by.
exactly. Just trying to survive in this harsh, unforgiving world. Or is there maybe something far more complex, more ingenious?
Hmm.
Maybe us waiting to be discovered.
Mm.
Today we're embarking on an extraordinary journey back in time. Our deep dive takes us to a pivotal period, roughly 400,000 to 40,000 years ago.
A huge stretch of time.
Huge. This wasn't just any period. It was a time when two distinct but equally fascinating human species, Neanderthals and early modern humans, walked the Earth.
Often side by side, living in the same landscapes.
Right, shaping the very foundation of what it means to be human.
It's a period that, honestly, it just shatters so many of our preconceived notions about early humanity.
It really does.
What's truly illuminating, I think, is discovering how much of our own human story, our incredible ingenuity, our profound social connections, even our earliest spiritual leanings, truly began in the flickering shadows of these ancient caves.
It's not just about survival, not by a long shot. It's really about the birth of culture.
And that's precisely what we aim to do for you, our listener. Our mission today is to give you a genuine shortcut to understanding this pivotal era.
Yeah, cutting through some of the jargon.
Definitely. We're extracting the most profound nuggets of knowledge and insight from our, well, pretty comprehensive stack of source material here. We hope to surprise you with revelations that will undoubtedly rewrite your mental image of the Stone Age. So prepare to have your perspectives broadened.
Let's do it.
Okay. So, to truly grasp the lives of these ancient ancestors, we really need to paint a vivid picture of their world.
The context is everything.
Absolutely. We're talking about a vast stretch of time from approximately 400,000 down to about 40,000 BCE.
Which firmly places us within what archaeologists call the Middle and Upper Paleolithic periods.
Right. Basically the latter half of the Stone Age. A vast span where humanity really began to innovate in some profound ways.
And all of this unfolded during a significant geological epoch, the Pleistocene, which is basically a fancy name for the Ice Age era.
Pretty much, yeah. And as the name suggests, it brought dramatic, often brutal climate shifts.
To give you a sense of scale and impact, this was a time defined by the relentless grip of the Ice Ages.
Especially the Würm Glacial period. We're talking mile-thick ice sheets carving landscapes across continents.
Wow.
Forcing both humans and animals to adapt or, well, perish. This wasn't just a cold backdrop, it was the ultimate survival challenge. It shaped every single aspect of their existence, from where they lived, what they ate, even how they thought. These extreme conditions were like a powerful evolutionary forge.
And geographically, our main players were spread across huge territories. Neanderthals predominantly occupied Europe, West Asia, and Central Asia.
Think regions like the Levant, that critical land bridge between Africa and Eurasia, and the rugged Caucasus Mountains.
Right. These weren't just places. They were crucial corridors where these ancient populations lived, hunted, and crucially interacted.
Definitely interacted. Meanwhile, early Homo sapiens were emerging from Africa, beginning their grand migrations, and spreading into Eurasia, often moving into territories already inhabited by Neanderthals.
Which is key. And it's vital to remember that caves throughout this entire period served as both essential shelters and, as we'll get into, significant cultural and ritual centers.
Absolutely fundamental.
Now, let's truly get to know our main characters. First up, the Neanderthals, scientifically known as Homo neanderthalensis.
Right. They emerged around 400,000 BCE, evolving from an earlier human species called Homo heidelbergensis.
And their physical adaptation is genuinely remarkable, isn't it?
It really is. Picture them. Short, stocky, incredibly muscular. And this wasn't just random, it was a perfect example of natural selection at work.
Built for the cold.
Quite literally built for the cold. Their robust bones and powerful physiques provided immense strength for navigating rugged terrain, hunting large prey. And they had those distinctive wide nostrils and large sinuses.
Right, I've read about that.
Crucial adaptations for warming the frigid air before it reached their lungs, preventing hypothermia in their respiratory systems.
Makes sense.
Their physical build really speaks volumes about evolutionary adaptation. It allowed them to thrive in these incredibly challenging, often sub-zero environments.
And despite some, persistent earlier misconceptions, their brain volume was actually comparable to modern humans.
Comparable, if not slightly larger on average, yeah. Around 1,500 cubic centimeters.
So that challenges any notion of them being intellectually inferior.
Completely. It points to complex cognitive abilities, and as we'll definitely see, they certainly exhibited complex social behaviors.
Okay, and then we have our own ancestors, early Homo sapiens or early modern humans.
Our lineage. They first appeared in Africa around 300,000 BCE, originating in warmer savannas.
Physically, they had a more slender skeletal structure, less pronounced brow ridges compared to Neanderthals.
That's right. These physical differences might seem subtle, but they hint at different adaptations, perhaps favoring agility and endurance over brute strength. Their migration out of Africa began around 100,000 BCE, a monumental journey that led them to eventually coexist with Neanderthals in the same geographical areas, setting the stage for an extraordinary encounter.
So we have these two distinct species evolving in parallel, each brilliantly adapted to their environment. But then something truly unexpected happened, didn't it?
Oh,
The
yeah.
genetic evidence has just completely reshaped our understanding of how they interacted.
It absolutely has. For decades, the prevailing story was one of simple replacement. One species just outcompeted or displaced the other.
Yeah, that was the old model.
But compelling genetic research has unveiled a far more intimate narrative. These two groups interbred,
Wow.
with the most significant instances occurring between roughly 60,000 and 40,000 BCE.
So recent, relatively speaking.
In the grand scheme, yes. And this doesn't just challenge previous notions of strict separation. It implies significant sustained interaction and, frankly, a level of tolerance we previously underestimated.
That's a truly profound shift in our understanding. It means the story isn't just one species replacing another, but something far more complex, more intertwined.
Exactly.
So when we talk about this genetic legacy, what does that 1–2% Neanderthal DNA in modern non-African populations actually tell us about our shared history and maybe even our present?
It's an astounding revelation that 1–2% isn't just some abstract scientific fact. It means a tiny echo of their resilience, their adaptations, perhaps even their experiences, is woven into your own genetic fabric today if your ancestry lies outside sub-Saharan Africa.
Incredible.
Scientists are actively researching what specific traits might have been passed down. For example, some studies suggest certain Neanderthal genes might have contributed to aspects of our immune system.
Helping us fight off diseases?
Potentially, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Helping early modern humans combat specific pathogens they encountered as they moved into Eurasia. Other research points to genes related to skin and hair color, or even, interestingly, predispositions to certain modern conditions like type 2 diabetes or even nicotine addiction.
Really? That's specific.
The links are complex and still being studied, but yes. This genetic exchange blurs lines we once considered solid. It forces us to redefine what human truly means and highlights a shared ancestry far more intimate than mere coexistence.
It reveals this complex tapestry of connection and adaptation.
That we're still unraveling, absolutely.
Okay, so from the grand sweep of the Ice Age and the intricacies of ancient genetics, let's zoom in on their everyday lives. Where did these remarkable people truly live?
Well, for many of them, home was undeniably where the cave was.
Right. Caves were much more than just holes in the ground for these ancient peoples. They were vital sanctuaries.
Especially during the relentless glacial climate of the Ice Age. They offered profound protection from the brutal cold, the biting winds, the incessant rain.
These natural formations were genuinely indispensable then.
Absolutely. They weren't just temporary shelters for a night or two. They became operational bases for pretty much every aspect of their existence.
Like a home base.
Exactly. Launching daily hunting expeditions, organizing gathering forays. When you think of significant European sites, iconic examples like Lascaux and Altamira in France and Spain,
Famous for the art.
renowned for their stunning art. Then there's Vogelherd in Germany, famous for its early figurines, and Grotta di Fumane in Italy, yielding rich evidence of early human life. These and countless other sites provide compelling evidence of both Neanderthals and early Homo sapiens using these natural fortresses extensively, often for millennia.
And it wasn't just about protection from the elements, right? Archaeological findings show us that caves weren't just chaotic, random living spaces.
Not at all. There's clear and compelling evidence of sophisticated spatial planning within them.
Meaning?
Different sections of a cave clearly serve different deliberate purposes. It indicates a surprising level of organization and foresight.
So they weren't just like piling in wherever.
Definitely not. This suggests a highly deliberate approach to their living arrangements, far beyond what we might casually associate with cave dwellers. For instance, evidence shows that fire-making areas were consistently located near the entrances.
Which makes perfect sense.
Right. For optimal light, warmth distribution, and crucial smoke ventilation. You don't want the smoke filling up the back of the cave.
Good point.
Deeper, darker sections were then potentially reserved for sleeping, maybe storage, or even specialized activities like tool making, offering more privacy and a more stable, warmer temperature further back.
Can you give an example?
A fantastic illustrative example comes from the La Ferracie cave in France. Neanderthals there created structured fire pits with surrounding stone arrangements.
So deliberate construction.
It indicates conscious, deliberate planning of their domestic space. They were actively adapting and shaping their environment to suit their needs.
Using natural features, too.
Yes, using natural rock formations to create partitions within the cave, and likely employing things like animal hides or branches to block cave entrances for added protection and insulation against the harsh exterior.
That's sophisticated. It really speaks volumes about their intelligence and their ability to conceptualize and modify their environment.
It really does.
Okay, so their daily survival in such an extreme environment relied heavily on their survival toolkit, their skills in hunting, gathering, and their impressive technological prowess.
Absolutely. Both species were expert hunter-gatherers, perfectly adapted to their specific environments and the available resources.
Neanderthals, in particular, were formidable hunters, right?
Yeah.
Specializing in large animals.
They really were. Imagine the incredible scene. Neanderthals working in coordinated groups, tracking a colossal mammoth across the frozen tundra.
Wow.
Or maybe ambushing a herd of wild horses or aurochs, those massive wild cattle. Their survival hinged on bringing down these formidable beasts.
Not just with brute force, though.
No, not just brute force. With finely crafted thrusting spears and cunning traps, it's a testament to their intelligence and cooperative spirit.
And their stone tool technology. The Levallois technique.
Yeah, the Levallois technique was incredibly advanced for its time. This wasn't just random chipping. It involved carefully preparing a stone core, then striking it precisely to produce large, strong, and consistently sharp-edged flakes.
So predictable results.
Exactly. These blades, or scrapers, were then used for butchering meat, processing animal hides for clothing and shelter, and meticulously preparing plant foods. It was an early form of, well, almost industrial design, ensuring consistency and efficiency.
But early modern humans pushed the technological envelope even further. What did they innovate that truly set them apart, that marked the next leap?
They absolutely refined and diversified tool production. Early Homo sapiens developed finer and lighter tools, often using new materials like bone, antler, and ivory, in addition to stone.
So more than just stone.
Right. We see the emergence of bladed tools, smaller, more specialized points, like microliths, that could be hafted onto wooden shafts to create composite tools.
Like what?
Things like early forms of spears with specialized points, arrows, potentially even harpoons for fishing later on. This innovation allowed for even greater versatility and efficiency in hunting and processing.
So they could exploit a wider range of resources.
Exactly. And adapt to more diverse ecological niches. This emphasis on specialized multi-component tools really speaks to a more complex cognitive approach to technology.
Okay, beyond tools, there was one absolute game changer that truly revolutionized their lives and was critical for survival.
Fire.
Fundamental. The controlled use of fire, known by Neanderthals as early as 400,000 BCE. That's incredible. It was an indispensable mastery.
Far beyond just using naturally occurring fires, it meant the ability to create fire, control it, sustain it.
And its benefits were huge.
Multifaceted, foundational to their success. Fire was essential for cooking.
Which makes food safer and more nutritious.
Exactly. Breaks down tough fibers, eliminates parasites, broadens dietary options. It provided indispensable warmth, a critical line of defense against the brutal Ice Age winters.
Allowing them to live in colder places.
Right, expanding into colder regions, surviving in conditions that would be otherwise uninhabitable. Fire also offered protection from predators,
Keeping dangerous animals away.
keeping them at bay, and it extended their active hours into the night, allowing for tool production, social interaction, storytelling, long after sunset.
Is there archaeological proof of this?
Oh, yes. The Kizum Cave in Israel offers compelling evidence of this mastery. We find Neanderthals creating regular fire pits and roasting meat there,
So sophisticated cooking.
indicating sophisticated culinary practices that go far beyond mere survival. It hints at early forms of communal eating, maybe social gatherings around the hearth.
Now let's talk about the intricate details that truly paint a picture of their daily lives. What they wore, what they ate, how their groups functioned.
The nitty-gritty.
Right. In those cold climates, Clothing was a necessity, not a luxury. Neanderthals used animal hides, processed with their stone scrapers.
Probably draped and wrapped themselves in furs. Basic but effective insulation.
But early Homo sapiens advanced this further, developing sewing.
Yeah, that's a key innovation. We find fine bone needles associated with Homo sapiens, suggesting they developed sewing techniques to create more complex, tailored garments.
Like actual clothes.
Imagine fitted jackets, leggings, maybe even hooded clothing that would have offered superior protection from the cold, greater mobility, and perhaps even conveyed social status or group identity.
Wow. And their diet.
Oh,
It wasn't just mammoth steaks, right?
no, their diet wasn't as simple as just meat and potatoes or, meat and roots.
Right.
Their dietary strategies varied significantly geographically and seasonally. In the colder, more open landscapes of Europe, a meat-heavy diet dominated deer, horse, bison, high-energy return. But in Mediterranean regions and during warmer periods, they consumed a much more diverse range of foods. Plants, roots, berries, nuts, even seafood.
So they needed deep knowledge of their environment.
Absolutely. Understanding local flora and fauna, seasonality, effective foraging techniques, and what's particularly surprising, challenging that old stereotype of Neanderthals as exclusively carnivorous.
Wow.
Findings from Spain's El Sidrón cave, they found plant remains, actual cooked plant matter, stuck on Neanderthal teeth.
No way.
Yeah, it suggests they were actively cooking or grinding plant foods, demonstrating a more flexible and intelligent approach to diet than previously assumed.
That's fascinating. And their social structures.
Ah, of
Also
course.
adapting to the pressures of their environments. How did these early human societies organize themselves?
That's a critical question. Neanderthals, it appears, tended towards smaller, maybe kinship-based groups, perhaps around 20 to 30 individuals.
Why smaller?
It was likely a pragmatic adaptation for mobility in harsh, resource-scarce landscapes, allowing them to cooperate closely for demanding activities like large game hunting. This tight-knit structure would foster strong bonds and mutual support.
But early Homo sapiens were different.
Compellingly different in this regard, yes. They began forming wider, more expansive social networks.
Connecting more groups together.
Exactly. This broader interconnectedness facilitated a greater sharing of materials, knowledge, information, allowed for broader cultural exchange, more diverse mating opportunities, and a crucial ability to mitigate risk during times of resource scarcity.
So if Homo sapiens were forming these wider networks, does that imply a greater capacity for abstract communication, maybe even proto-language, allowing this broader connectivity?
That's a very insightful question, and it's certainly hypothesized. The development of more complex language is seen by many as a driver, or at least a facilitator, of these larger social networks in Homo sapiens.
And what did these different social dynamics mean for their homes, their caves?
Well, these wider networks absolutely transformed the role of caves for Homo sapiens. Caves weren't just places to sleep or eat. They became vibrant social centers.
Hubs of activity.
Dynamic hubs of community life. Consider the Grotte Chauvet in France, famous for its incredible cave art. That wasn't just a private gallery.
Right.
It strongly hints at community gatherings, perhaps, for rituals, for intergenerational learning, maybe storytelling performances that brought these early communities together, forging a shared identity in those vast, echoing, cavernous environments.
Okay, so we've explored their incredible ingenuity in adapting their daily lives, their technology, but what about their inner world? Beliefs, art, rituals.
The symbolic realm.
Exactly. We often think of complex rituals as a hallmark of modern humans, but the evidence for Neanderthal burial practices challenges that perception entirely, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
The evidence of Neanderthals burying their dead dates back to 120,000 BCE, long before many believed such profound practices existed. That's a truly profound leap.
It signifies a remarkable cognitive shift, a recognition of individuality, a sense of loss, perhaps a nascent understanding of life and death. Consider Shanidar Cave in Iraq.
The flower burial.
Exactly. The discovery of a Neanderthal skeleton there, surrounded by what appear to be clusters of flower pollen. It's such a poignant detail. It strongly suggests a symbolic burial ritual.
Reverence for the deceased.
An early form of remembrance, perhaps even an attempt to adorn the dead for a journey. Similarly, at La Chapelle-Saint in France, a Neanderthal was found buried in a fetal position.
Which could mean different things.
Right. Some interpret it simply as a practical way to fit a body in a small grave. but it definitely opens fascinating speculation about beliefs in an afterlife, or maybe a cyclical view of rebirth.
And it wasn't just the body's position or the presence of flowers. Sometimes objects were buried with them,
Yes, the discovery of stone tools, animal bones, or even ornaments found alongside the deceased in some Neanderthal graves adds layers of interpretation.
like provisions for a journey.
Could be. Provisions for a journey beyond life, offerings to unseen forces, or maybe simply personal belongings cherished by the individual.
Which raises an important point for us today. How do we interpret such ancient evidence without imposing our modern biases?
That is the constant challenge. The Krapina Cave in Croatia offers a stark and often debated example of this interpretive difficulty.
What happened there?
Cut marks were found on Neanderthal bones, consistent with defleshing. Now, some scholars interpret these as direct evidence of cannibalism, maybe driven by nutritional needs in hard times.
But there are other interpretations.
Yes. Others propose it was part of a ritualistic practice, maybe bone cleaning before a secondary burial, or perhaps a complex funerary rite involving the removal of flesh for other symbolic reasons.
So we don't know for sure.
We don't. It's a powerful reminder that archaeology often presents us with tantalizing clues that are open to multiple, often competing interpretations. It constantly pushes us to think critically about our assumptions and the limits of our knowledge.
Okay, moving forward in time. Early Homo sapiens, particularly in the Upper Paleolithic, truly marked the dawn of deeper, more elaborate symbolism. After 50,000 BCE, we see this astonishing explosion of complex symbolic behaviors.
It's a real flowering of creativity.
What triggered this? And how did cave art, for example, become such a significant part of these rituals?
Well, the Upper Paleolithic explosion of symbolic behavior in Homo sapiens is still a subject of intense research, but it's clearly linked to complex cognitive abilities and maybe those more intricate social structures we talked about.
Right.
Cave art, for instance, transitioned from potentially simpler markings to breathtaking masterpieces. It became a central component of these early belief systems.
It's like Lascaux.
Exactly. Think of the incredible images in Lascaux Cave in France, with its detailed animal paintings, horses, bison, deer, rendered with incredible anatomical accuracy and dynamism.
They weren't just decorations, though.
No way. They were profoundly meaningful, potentially linked to hunting rituals aimed at ensuring success.
Sympathetic magic.
Perhaps. Or maybe tied to supernatural beliefs, depicting spirit animals or shamanistic visions. They could also have been instructional, passing down knowledge about animal behavior, or maybe even serving as early forms of lunar calendars.
Beyond the magnificent cave paintings, early Homo sapiens also engaged in the widespread production of decorative items.
Yes, carefully crafted seashells, intricately carved bone beads, painted stones. Personal adornment becomes much more common.
And Blombo's cave in South Africa is key here, even earlier.
Absolutely crucial. Blombos provide some of the most significant findings, dating back to between 100,000 and 70,000 BCE, long before the European cave art boom.
What did they find?
We've unearthed pierced seashells there that were clearly strung and worn as adornments, showing a deliberate act of self-expression, maybe social signaling. Even more striking are pieces of ochre that red pigment etched with abstract geometric patterns.
Not pictures, but patterns.
Abstract designs. This isn't just color. These are some of the earliest concrete evidence of symbolic thought. The human capacity for meaning-making outside of direct utility.
Wow. Shows an awareness of aesthetics, identity.
Complex communication. It predates much of what we previously considered modern human behavior by tens of thousands of years.
And imagine this. Music. Music filled the air in these ancient caves.
It's incredible to think about.
The discovery of a bone flute, dating to around 40,000 BCE at Hohlfels Cave in Germany, is just astonishing.
And this isn't just a primitive whistle. It's a precisely crafted instrument made from a bird bone. It demonstrates sophisticated craftsmanship and an understanding of acoustics.
So what was the music for?
Well, it wasn't just for entertainment, most likely. Music is deeply embedded in human social and spiritual life. Perhaps complex dance performances accompanied by these flutes. Rituals, trance states, maybe evocative storytelling performances that truly brought these communities together, creating powerful shared experiences, fostering a collective identity in those environments.
So music could have helped transmit cultural knowledge across generations, too.
Very likely. It adds a whole sensory dimension to their lives that's easy to forget.
These ancient walls, then, weren't just canvases. They were living messages from the past. The power of cave art and symbolism is immense.
A window into their beliefs.
And while Neanderthal artistic expression was perhaps more limited in scope than Homo sapiens, it definitely existed. You mentioned red pigment traces in Cueva de Ardales in Spain.
Yes, dating to around 60,000 BCE. These aren't natural stains. They seem to be intentional markings, showing symbolic thought.
So the capacity was there.
The debate around Neanderthal art is complex, but sites like Ardales and others with patterned markings or modified objects do suggest a capacity for symbolic expression.
Then, in the Upper Paleolithic, Homo sapiens cave art absolutely exploded. Sites like Lascaux and Altamira.
Breathtakingly intricate animal figures, often depicting the megafauna they hunted, alongside handprints, abstract symbols.
And these weren't just pretty pictures. Their purpose went far beyond aesthetics.
Profoundly connected to shamanistic or religious rituals. Like we said, maybe hunting success rituals, believed to influence the hunt through sympathetic magic.
And both groups used ochre.
Yes, both Neanderthals and Homo sapiens widely used red and yellow ochre pigments. Not just for cave art, but also for body painting, ornamentation, other ritualistic purposes. It's frequently found in both caves and graves, hinting at its deep importance.
So, given all this incredible archaeological evidence, burials, art, ornaments, music, what does this all mean for their spiritual beliefs?
Well, it's crucial to acknowledge the lack of definitive knowledge here. We can't know precisely what they believed about the supernatural or the details of their cosmology.
No written records.
Exactly. However, the consistent burial rituals, the profound care for the dead, the proliferation of art, it strongly points to a symbolic understanding of death, nature, and the animals that shared their world.
Which leads to fascinating speculations, like potential animal cults.
Possibly hinting at more defined belief systems like totemism or animism, where spirits are believed to inhabit natural objects or animals.
And the bear cult theory.
That stems from discoveries like bear bones found near a Neanderthal skeleton in Shanidar Cave, the same site with the flower burial. It's led to compelling speculation about a possible bear cult.
Why bears?
During this period, cave bears were formidable creatures, powerful, dangerous, yet also providers of resources, maybe seen as embodying potent spiritual forces. Their hibernation and reemergence could have even symbolized cycles of death and rebirth.
So a complex relationship.
Suggests deep recognition of their power, perhaps a profound spiritual connection. An early, complex relationship with the natural world that went way beyond just predator-prey dynamics.
Okay, to fully grasp their existence, we have to keep returning to that relentless Ice Age environment that shaped them.
Can't emphasize it enough.
The period from 400,000 to 40,000 BCE falls squarely within the final Ice Age of the Pleistocene epoch, characterized by dramatic fluctuations.
Between relatively warmer interglacial periods and intensely cold arid glacial periods, profoundly impacting landscapes and life forms.
Neanderthals, as we've discussed, were remarkably adapted to these conditions, especially the cold tundra environments across Europe and Eurasia.
Their very physiology was honed by generations living in these frigid zones.
While early Homo sapiens, coming from warmer African savannas, underwent their own significant transition as they spread into these colder regions.
Which forced them to adapt in new and ingenious ways, developing cultural and technological solutions to cope with environments they weren't inherently biologically optimized for.
And the animal kingdom of this time, it was truly epic, wasn't it?
Oh, it was a world of magnificent megafauna, absolutely.
Like what? Remind us.
Majestic mammoths, formidable woolly rhinos with their thick coats and huge horns, towering cave bears that dwarfed modern grizzlies, and those terrifying saber-toothed cats.
Wow. Central to their survival.
Providing food, hides, bones for tools, fat for fuel, and the vegetation was primarily expansive tundra and vast steppes across the north, supporting those large grazers, though you'd find forests and more varied plants in Mediterranean areas and during warmer phases.
So when we look at their different paths to survival, we see distinct adaptation strategies emerging.
Different means to thrive, yeah.
Neanderthals, you said, had profound physical adaptations to cold.
Right. Their body shape stocky, robust, shorter limbs, minimize surface area relative to mass, helping retain body heat. Their wide nostrils warming the air. Behaviorally, they relied heavily on sophisticated group hunting strategies for the massive animals forming the core of their diet. Requiring close coordination, shared local knowledge, they had an intimate understanding of their immediate environment.
Homo sapiens, on the other hand, developed a more flexible strategy. less reliant on specific biology for cold.
Exactly. More focused on behavioral and technological innovation. It wasn't necessarily about evolving specific physical traits for cold survival, but rather a capacity for rapid cultural and technological evolution.
Like better tools.
Significant advancements in tool tech, yeah, including early forms of projectile weapons, maybe bows and arrows, or the atlatl, the spear thrower, allowing safer hunting from a distance.
And crucially, those broader social networks.
Absolutely crucial. This interconnectedness facilitated the rapid sharing of knowledge, techniques, resources across vast distances.
Like an insurance policy.
In a way, yes. If one region suffered resource scarcity, they could rely on connections to other groups, leading to greater resilience, enabling them to adapt quickly to diverse, changing environments, pushing into new territories.
Okay, as we approach the culmination of this incredible journey through time, let's quickly highlight both the key distinctions and striking similarities between these two fascinating human species.
Comparing and contrasting.
Right. Technologically, what were the fundamental differences?
Neanderthals, while highly skilled, largely focused on robust, less varied tools using that Levallois technique. Highly effective, but less diverse. Homo sapiens, in contrast, developed a much wider range of finer, lighter, more specialized tools.
Bone needles, harpoons.
Delicate bone needles for sewing, maybe barbed harpoons for fishing, microliths for composite tools. This technological flexibility allowed greater specialization and efficiency.
Giving them an edge in adapting.
Potentially, yes, exploiting a broader array of resources.
And another clear distinction, artistic and symbolic expressions.
Follows from their cognitive approaches, perhaps. Homo sapiens demonstrated far more complex and widespread artistic expressions. Cave art, figurines, adornments. Neanderthal symbolic behaviors existed, but generally more limited in scope and complexity.
Suggesting a different emphasis in abstract thought.
Or maybe just a different way of expressing it that's harder for us to see archaeologically, but the difference in output is undeniable.
And this leads directly to social networks. Homo sapiens established wider trade and communication networks. How critical was that?
Absolutely critical. It fundamentally impacted resource sharing, mating opportunities, the accelerated spread of cultural innovations. Larger networks provided a significant buffer against environmental challenges.
Greater resilience.
Allowed for greater resilience and adaptability across different groups and environments, potentially giving Homo sapiens a crucial advantage in colonizing new territories and responding to climate shifts.
But despite these compelling distinctions, it's equally important to recognize their striking similarities. These shared traits reveal fundamental human behaviors.
Underscoring our common ancestry, both species mastered controlled fire, use a truly foundational human innovation.
Both used caves as essential shelters, adapting them into homes.
Similar pragmatic approaches to survival there. And critically, both species performed burial rituals, demonstrating a shared capacity for symbolic thought, empathy, maybe a nascent understanding of life and death.
These shared behaviors really underscore the deep cognitive and emotional commonalities they held.
Definitely.
Which brings us back to the genetic intermingling. It truly highlights how intertwined their stories became.
The fact that modern humans carry Neanderthal DNA confirms significant interaction, not just coexistence, but actual genetic exchange, profoundly shaping our own lineage.
Challenging those simplistic narratives of ancient history.
Making our story richer and far more complex.
Okay. To bring all of this to life, let's take a rapid-fire tour of some of the most significant archaeological sites that gave us these insights. Each one's like a time capsule.
A direct window. First, Shanidar Cave in Iraq. Pivotal site. Compelling evidence of Neanderthal burial rituals, including that poignant flower burial, suggests deep care, maybe even attempts at healing.
Then Kazim Cave in Israel. Pushing back the timeline for advanced behaviors, evidence of sophisticated long-term fire use by Neanderthals and their ancestors, refined tool production, mastery of essentials.
Blombos Cave in South Africa, absolutely crucial for understanding Homo sapiens' early symbolic behavior. Earliest undisputed evidence of abstract thought, pierced shell beads, engraved ochre, 100,000 years ago.
Incredible. And the iconic Lascaux and Altamira caves in France and Spain. Breathtaking examples of Homo sapiens' sophisticated cave art. Intricate, vibrant animal figures, mysterious symbols, insights into their spiritual and practical lives.
Absolutely stunning. Finally, we revisit Krapina Cave in Croatia, that site prompting intense debate. Those intriguing cut marks on Neanderthal bones.
Ritual or cannibalism.
Exactly. Complex discussions, pushing us to consider the full spectrum of behaviors and the challenges of interpreting ancient evidence without modern bias.
So, wrapping this all up, what does this mean for our understanding of human history? The period between 400,000 and 40,000 BCE was undeniably critical.
A crucible of human evolution, biologically and culturally. Not just a harsh struggle, a time of remarkable adaptation, innovation, burgeoning complex thought.
Laying the groundwork for everything that followed.
Neanderthals, often misunderstood, were incredibly adept, adapting to harsh climates, developing complex tools, mastering fire, engaging in early rituals that speak to a profound inner life.
Their achievements are a testament to their resilience and intelligence.
Absolutely.
And early Homo sapiens, our direct ancestors, added new dimensions, pushing boundaries of symbolic thought, creating enduring art, expanding social networks that accelerated cultural development.
Their journey out of Africa and across continents is one of the great stories of human exploration and adaptation.
And connecting this to the bigger picture, caves weren't just homes.
They were the very heart of their cultural and spiritual lives, canvases for art, sacred sites for burial, vibrant gathering places where communities forged identities.
And that profound interaction, the genetic intermingling of these two species.
Profoundly shaped modern humanity's genetic and cultural heritage. A shared journey that continues to resonate within us, making our story richer, more complex than we ever imagined.
So as you go about your day, consider this: the ingenuity, the complex social bonds you form, even that spiritual yearning you might experience. How much of that truly began in the flickering shadows of an ancient cave?
Shared by our ancient relatives, both Neanderthal and early modern human.
What surprising insights might you uncover by looking at the world through their eyes, understanding that a piece of them perhaps still lives within you? We invite you to explore further the incredible unfolding story of early human history.